My name is Vera Lint. I'm 33 years old. And on a Wednesday evening in April, my younger sister sat at my parents' dinner table, slid a magazine across to me with a smile that had been practiced in a mirror and said, "It came out really well, don't you think?" The cover was a local business publication, small circulation, glossy pages, the kind of magazine that sat in dentist waiting rooms and hotel lobbies. The feature was on page 14. Half a page, a photograph of my sister standing in front of a rack of clothes with her arms crossed and her chin lifted, and a headline that read, "Stella Lint, Self-Made." I read the article once. Then I read it again. My name was not in it, not once, not as a contributor, not as a partner, not as a footnote. 3 years of my nights and weekends, the website I built from scratch, the supplier relationships I negotiated, the branding I designed at my kitchen table at 11 o'clock at night, none of it existed in those 14 column inches. Stella was the visionary. Stella was the founder. Stella was self-made. I set the magazine down on the table. I looked at my sister, and I asked her one question. Before I tell you what she said, and what I did within an hour of getting home that night, drop your city and the time where you are. I want to know where this story finds you. Now let me take you back 3 years. To the Sunday afternoon my sister called me with an idea, and I made the mistake of believing she understood what she was asking for. My sister Stella is 29 years old. She is the kind of person who has always been better at wanting things than at doing them. Not lazy, exactly. More like someone whose vision for how something should look has never been connected to any understanding of how things actually get built. She had ideas constantly, vivid and enthusiastic and detailed in all the wrong ways. She knew what the brand should feel like, what the Instagram aesthetic should be, what kind of customer she wanted to attract. She had no idea how to build a website, negotiate with a supplier, write a product description, set up a payment processor, or read a profit margin. She was also, and I say this as someone who loves her, extraordinarily good at being the face of things. She was charming and photogenic, and had a natural ease on camera that I had watched her develop since she was 16, putting on one-woman shows for our parents in the living room. She was made for the front of a business. She just needed someone to build the back of it. That someone was me. I work in UX design for a mid-sized tech company. I have spent 8 years learning how digital products are built, the architecture, the user experience, the back-end systems that make a website feel effortless from the front. I am not a natural performer. I am precise and methodical, and I find deep satisfaction in making complicated things work simply. Stella called me on a Sunday in March 3 years ago. She had been talking about starting a boutique for 2 years, the kind of thing that existed as a mood board on her laptop and a folder of saved Instagram posts. She said she was serious this time. She said she had found a supplier. She said she had the vision. She just needed help getting it off the ground. "What kind of help?" I asked. "Just the technical stuff," she said. "The website, the setup. You know how to do all of that. It would take you no time." It would take you no time. I should have paid closer attention to that sentence. I said I would help. Because she was my sister and I believed in the idea, and because I thought that no time meant a few weekends and a functioning storefront, and then I would hand it over and she would run it. I was wrong about all of that. The first weekend I built the website. Not a template, not a drag-and-drop platform. A proper site, custom designed, with a product catalog system and a checkout flow and an inventory management backend that a non-technical person could operate without breaking anything. I spent 14 hours on Saturday and 9 on Sunday. I showed Stella how the dashboard worked, how to add products, how to process orders. She watched and nodded and said it looked amazing. The following week she called me because the payment processor wasn't connecting properly. I fixed it in 40 minutes. The week after that she called because she didn't understand how to upload product photos at the right resolution. I wrote her a step-by-step guide with screenshots. The week after that she called because a customer had a return and she didn't know how to process it in the system. I processed it for her. That pattern established itself so quietly and so completely that I didn't notice it becoming permanent until it already was. Every technical problem came to me, every system issue, every platform question, every time something wasn't working the way she expected. The call came to me and I fixed it. Because fixing it was faster than explaining it, and I had always been the one who fixed things. Meanwhile, I was also doing things she hadn't asked me to do, but that needed doing. I built the brand identity, the logo, the color palette, the typography, the visual language that made Stella's Boutique look like a real business instead of a hobby. I set up the email marketing system and wrote the first 6 months of welcome sequences. I negotiated the initial supplier agreement because Stella froze on the call and handed me the phone and mouthed, "Help me." I set up the business social media accounts and wrote the bio and configured the shop integration. By month 4, I was spending 12 to 15 hours a week on a business that was not mine. I told myself it was an investment, that once the business was stable, I would step back and it would run itself and my involvement would taper naturally. I told myself this for 3 years. My friend Marcus, who had watched all of this from the beginning, said to me once, "Vera, you're not helping her launch a business. You are the business. She's the influencer." I said that wasn't fair. He said, "When's the last time she solved a problem without calling you?" I didn't answer that. By the end of year 2, Stella's Boutique was generating $180,000 in annual revenue. That number came from a combination of things. Stella's social presence, which was genuine and earned. She was good at content, good with her audience, good at the particular warmth that makes people want to buy things from a person rather than a store. And the operational infrastructure I had built and maintained, which processed every order, managed every supplier relationship, handled every customer service system, and kept the entire thing from collapsing under its own growth. Stella paid herself a salary, $48,000 a year, drawn from the business account I had set up and still managed the reconciliation for. She paid me nothing. Not because she had decided not to. Because we had never discussed it. In the beginning, I was helping launch something and you don't charge your sister for help. By the time it became something else, the arrangement had calcified into its original shape, and changing it felt like introducing a new rule to a game already in progress. I had tried once, 8 months in, when I realized I was spending more hours on Stella's business than on anything for myself. I said to her, "I think we should talk about what this arrangement looks like, formally." She said, "Oh, totally, yes, we should do that. Let's set something up." We never set something up. She called me 3 days later about a supplier invoice she didn't know how to process, and I processed it, and the conversation about the arrangement didn't happen again. I let it not happen. That's on me, I know that. But there is a difference between not raising something and actively erasing it. In January of that year, a journalist from the local business magazine contacted Stella about a feature: young female entrepreneurs in the area, rising businesses. Stella texted me immediately, excited, and I texted back that it was great news and she deserved it. She did deserve recognition. I want to be clear about that. Her social presence was real. Her relationship with her customers was genuine. The face of the business was absolutely hers. But she didn't tell the journalist about me. I know this because the journalist contacted me 3 weeks later through my professional LinkedIn, said she had been profiling Stella's Boutique and was doing background research, and asked if I could speak to the technical infrastructure of the business. I said yes. I spoke to her for 40 minutes. When the article came out, I was not in it. I called the journalist afterward. She was apologetic and genuinely confused. She said Stella had reviewed the draft before publication and that the version submitted had reflected Stella's corrections. Stella had edited me out. I need to stop here for a second, because I want to tell you what that felt like. Not for drama. Because I think some of you know this feeling and I want to name it accurately. It didn't feel like betrayal right away. It felt like recognition. Like finally seeing clearly something that had been in front of me for a long time. The way you walk into a room and notice the furniture has always been arranged badly and you just stopped seeing it. I had built something real, and my sister had looked at what I built and decided it was hers, not in a moment of cruelty, in a pattern of small decisions that had accumulated into a version of the story where I didn't exist. Has someone ever taken something you built and told it as their own story? I want to hear from you in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because what I did the night of that dinner, nobody in my family saw coming. The dinner was on a Wednesday. My parents, my sister, me. A normal weeknight dinner, the kind we had every few weeks, comfortable and unremarkable. My mother had made pasta. My father was telling a story about something at work. Stella arrived 15 minutes late with the magazine under her arm, and the smile I mentioned, the one that had been practiced. She slid it across to me. I read it. Twice. I set it down. My mother picked it up. "Oh, Stella, this is wonderful. Self-made. Look at that." My father leaned over to see the photograph. "Very professional." Stella was glowing. The particular glow of someone who has wanted something for a long time and finally has it. I looked at her across the table. "One question," I said. She looked at me, still smiling. "What?" "The journalist called me 3 weeks ago for background research. Did you know she contacted me?" The smile stayed. "She mentioned she might reach out to a few people. She asked about the technical infrastructure of the business. I spoke to her for 40 minutes. "Right." Stella reached for her water glass. She was very thorough. "You reviewed the draft before it published." A pause, barely noticeable. "They always let you do that. Make sure nothing's inaccurate." "And my name wasn't inaccurate to leave out?" The table went quiet. My mother looked up from the magazine. My father set down his fork. Stella's smile thinned at the edges. "Vera, it's a feature about me, about my journey. It's not a credits list." "Your journey?" I said. "Yes. The website I built, the supplier contract I negotiated, the brand identity I designed, the email system I set up and still run, the 12 to 15 hours a week I've been putting in for 3 years. I kept my voice level. "That's your journey." Her chin lifted. "I built the audience. I built the customer relationships. I did the content, the shoots, the community. That's what the article is about." "I know what you did, Stella. I also know what I did. You helped me." That word. Helped. "Is that what it was?" I asked. She looked at our parents. Not for support exactly. More like a reflex, the way people look toward familiar faces when a conversation goes somewhere they didn't plan for. My mother said carefully, "Girls." "It's a great article," Stella said, closing the subject in the way she always closed subjects she didn't want open. "I thought you'd be happy for me." I looked at her for a moment. Then I picked up my fork and finished my pasta. I didn't say another word about it at the table. I didn't need to. I got home at 8:47 p.m. I know the time because I checked it when I sat down at my desk, the same desk where I had spent 3 years building something that belonged to someone else. I opened my laptop. I want to tell you what I owned. Not to be technical, but because the specifics matter. I owned the domain name, stellasboutique.com, registered in my name on the account I had set up 3 years ago because Stella hadn't known how to do it, and I had done it the way I always did things, completely, so it would work. I owned the hosting account the website ran on. I owned the master login for the website backend. I owned the business email account the store ran through. I owned the supplier portal login because the account had been created with my professional email during the negotiation call. I owned the social media advertising account, the one connected to my personal payment method, because Stella's card had been declined during setup and she had said she'd sort it out and never had. I owned the email marketing platform account, 14,000 subscribers, 3 years of sequences, every automated message that had ever gone out to a customer. I did not own the social media profiles themselves. Those were hers. The audience she had built was hers. The content, the relationships, the community, all hers. I was not interested in taking what was hers. I was only interested in taking back what was mine. I started at 8:47 p.m. By 10:15 p.m., I had transferred the domain to my personal registrar account and pointed it to a blank page. By 10:42 p.m., I had exported the full customer database, the supplier contact list, And the 3 years of financial records I had maintained saved everything to an encrypted drive and removed my access credentials from the shared folder. By 11:08 p.m., I had suspended the email marketing account, downloaded the full subscriber list for my own records, and closed the advertising account after pulling a complete export of every campaign, every result, every dollar spent. By 11:30 p.m., the website was down, not hacked, not broken, simply no longer pointing anywhere. A blank page where a business used to be. I sat back in my chair. I was not shaking. I was not angry. I was the particular calm of someone who has done something they should have done a long time ago and is only now understanding what waiting had cost. I sent Stella one message. I typed it carefully because I wanted it to say exactly what it meant and nothing more. I've reclaimed the assets registered in my name. The domain, the hosting, the email platform, the supplier portal, the ad account. You'll find the website is currently offline. I'm happy to discuss a formal arrangement going forward. If you'd like to rebuild on your own infrastructure, I can provide documentation on what was in place. Let me know. I sent it at 11:34 p.m. Then I closed my laptop and went to bed. Her first message came at 11:41 p.m. What did you do? Not a question, a statement. The kind people make when they already know the answer and are hoping they're wrong. I didn't reply that night. At 6:15 a.m., her calls started. I let them go to voicemail. She left 3. The first was confused. The second was angry. The third was crying, which was the one I listened to most carefully because it was the most honest thing she'd said since the magazine came out. She said, "Vera, I don't understand why you're doing this. The website is just gone. I have orders pending. Customers are emailing me. I don't know how any of this works without you. I don't know how any of this works without you." There it was. The sentence that had been true for 3 years and had finally been said out loud. I texted her back at 8 a.m. I know, that's the point. Call me when you're ready to talk about what a real partnership looks like. She called at 8:04. You need to put the website back up, she said. The crying was gone. The voice was controlled again, which meant she had spent the 44 minutes between my text and her call deciding on a strategy. I will, I said, once we have an agreement. You can't just hold my business hostage? I'm not holding your business hostage. I reclaimed assets that were registered in my name. The business is still yours. Your Instagram is still there. Your customers can still find you. The infrastructure is mine. That's the same thing. It's really not. A pause. Vera, I have pending orders. Real customers waiting for real packages. I know. I processed most of those orders. I'll make sure the customers are notified that there's a temporary disruption. Nobody will lose their purchase. That's not the point. Then what is the point, Stella? Silence. The article, she said finally. Yes. I didn't think... She stopped. I thought the article was about my story, my side of it. There is no your side that exists without my side. That's what I need you to understand. Not for credit, for accuracy. She was quiet. You told a journalist I helped you, I said. Like I brought over dinner when you were sick. Helping is what I did the first weekend. What I've been doing for 3 years is something else, and we both know it. I didn't know how to explain it, she said. Her voice had shifted again. Less strategic, more uncertain. It sounds complicated. A sister who does the technical stuff. It's hard to explain without it sounding weird. It sounds like a business partner, I said, because that's what it is. Another long silence. What do you want? She asked. A real conversation. In person, with a clear head and no magazine on the table. She agreed. We met 2 days later at a coffee shop halfway between our apartments. She arrived first. I saw her through the window before I went in, sitting with both hands around a cup she wasn't drinking from, the posture of someone who has been thinking hard and hasn't arrived anywhere comfortable. I sat across from her. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then she said, I'm sorry about the article. Not, I didn't mean to. Not, I thought it was fine. Just, I'm sorry. Thank you, I said. I told myself it was my story to tell. And it is, partly. But I left you out on purpose, and I knew I was doing it, and I did it anyway because I wanted the feature to be clean and simple and about me. She looked at her cup. That was wrong. Yes, I said. It was. I also, she paused. I think I've been letting myself not think about what you actually do, because thinking about it meant having a conversation I didn't want to have. About money. About all of it. Money, credit, what we actually are to each other professionally. I kept calling it "you're helping me" because that made it feel smaller than it is. It's not smaller than it is. I know. She finally looked up. I know that now. I looked at my sister across the coffee shop table. 29 years old, genuinely talented at the part of the business she had built, genuinely capable of growth, and genuinely aware, perhaps for the first time, of the gap between the story she had been telling and the one that was true. I don't want to take the business from you, I said. I want to be in it properly. Okay. That means a formal agreement, a proper split of operational responsibilities, compensation for what I've been doing retroactively, or equity, or both. Something real that we both sign. She nodded. Okay. And if the magazine asks for a correction or a follow-up feature, you tell the truth. She was quiet for a moment. Then, I already emailed the journalist. That surprised me. When? Yesterday morning, I told her the piece was missing significant context about the operational side of the business. I asked if they'd consider a follow-up. I sat with that for a moment. She said yes, Stella added. She actually said it made the story more interesting. Of course it did. The real story always does. We hired a small business attorney 3 weeks later. She reviewed what we had, which was 3 years of informal arrangement with no documentation, a website in my name, supplier contracts in my name, and a business generating $180,000 a year. And she said, without judgment, "This is very common between family members, and it almost always ends badly. You're both lucky you're in the room before it did." We came out of that process with a formal partnership agreement, 40% to me for operational infrastructure and ongoing technical management, 60% to Stella for brand, content, and customer relationships. Retroactive compensation for year 1 and year 2, paid out over 12 months, a clear delineation of who owned what and who was responsible for what. The website went back up on a Thursday morning, 6 days after it had gone dark. The follow-up article ran 8 weeks later. A short piece, honest and specific. Stella Lint and her sister Vera, who built the operational backbone of the business from the ground up. A photograph of both of us, standing together in front of the product racks. My sister with her arms crossed and her chin lifted the way she always stood, and me beside her, which was where I had always been. My name in print. It was not everything, but it was true. I want to tell you what changed after the agreement. The obvious thing changed. I was compensated properly for my work for the first time, which mattered not just financially, but in the way that being paid for something changes how you hold it. When something is named and valued, it stops being a favor. It becomes a contribution. That distinction sounds small. It isn't. But something else changed too. Stella started learning, not perfectly, not overnight, but genuinely. She began sitting with me on the technical side instead of handing problems over. She learned how the dashboard worked, really learned it, not just well enough to get through a task, but well enough to understand it. She started asking questions that showed she was thinking about the infrastructure rather than just expecting it to function. By the end of the year, she could process supplier invoices herself. She could troubleshoot basic website issues. She could read the monthly analytics report and understand what it was telling her. She was not me. She was not going to become me. But she was no longer entirely dependent, and that shift changed the shape of our relationship in ways I hadn't anticipated. She called me one evening in December, not about a problem, just to talk. She said she had been thinking about the first year, about all the things she hadn't known she didn't know, and she said, "I think I let you carry it because it was easier. And I think I knew on some level that you'd let me. Yes, I said, I would have. Why? I thought about that. Because I wanted the business to succeed, and because it was easier to do it myself than to teach you, and because somewhere in there I thought the work would speak for itself. It should have, she said. I should have made it speak. We both let it go quiet, I said. That was the honest version. Not just what she had done, what I had allowed. The magazine is framed now, the follow-up, not the original. It hangs in the small office space we rent together on the 3rd floor of a building on Meridian Street, where I work 3 days a week on the business alongside my regular job. Stella is there most days. Her desk faces the window, mine faces the wall, which is how I prefer it. No distractions, just the work. Some mornings I get there before her and I sit at my desk in the quiet and I think about the Sunday afternoon she called me 3 years ago and said it would take me no time. It took me a great deal of time. It also built something real, and for the first 2.5 years, only one of us could say that publicly. Now both of us can. That is not a small thing. I built the back of a business for 3 years and let the front take all the credit and called it helping. I know why I did that. I know the particular habit of capable people, the assumption that the work is its own reward, that quality speaks, that recognition will arrive eventually if the thing you build is good enough. It doesn't work that way. Not in business and not in families. You have to name what you built. You have to put your name on it. And if someone removes your name, you have to be willing to go into the system at 8:47 on a Wednesday night and take back every asset registered in your name until the story gets told correctly. That is not cruelty. That is accuracy. And accuracy, I have learned, is the most powerful thing a quiet person can reach for. If someone has been taking credit for something you built, I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments. And if this story found you at the right moment, share it with someone who needs the reminder that their name belongs on what they made. I'll see you next time.